Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sarah Newman, and I'm so excited to share gorgeous new Winter Tales designs from our friends at Stamperia. So today we're going to start with some absolutely stunning rice paper designs. We've got quite a few to show you today. So we're starting with the Poinsettia. We also have the Far Away design, a cozy little cottage here in the snowy woods. We have the Castle Winter Tale, which has some circular motifs here. Really easy to cut out with scissors, and you can also tear them out. So I'll show you how easy that is to do. And we have the Round Landscape. Now, to go with these rice paper designs, we will work with the Winter Tales Patterned Paper Collection. As you can see, this set has 10 double-sided sheets of 12 by 12 inch cardstock with really elegant designs that have a fairy tale, kind of a folklore style to them. Beautiful illustrations, some large illustrations here, as well as some cutout motifs. So you'll have some larger ones as well. Here toward the back, you can see you've got some smaller pieces too. Now, to coordinate with this, there is matching chipboard, and this is just one of the collections that we will take a look at today. Now, of course, we'll do some card making, and I also have some quick and easy projects using the mini envelopes and gift card holder dies. Now, this will really come in handy if you give gift cards or money gifts for Christmas. They can also hold little notes or journaling if you're working on Christmas scrapbook pages and albums. As you can see, we have a lot to explore today, and I'm really glad that you're here. Come play with us. Let's begin with our rice paper and see how it can be used on cards. Now here you can see my card focal is a beautiful snowy cottage design, and this is one of the Round Landscape rice paper designs, and I've simply adhered it to the round chipboard piece, which is then layered onto a scallop piece that you can see here. So let's take a look at how easy this process is. Now, rice paper is a translucent paper with fibers. It's kind of like a cross between tissue paper and mulberry paper. I think you can see some of those little white fibers in there. This has been printed on one side with absolutely beautiful designs. Now, because the paper is translucent, you can easily adhere it to a light colored surface, like this white chipboard piece, and the design will stand out. Take a look at what happens, though, when you put this onto a dark paper. So this will then blend into that background. So depending on what kind of surface you put it onto, you'll get a different effect. Okay, so I'm working with the circled chipboard piece, and this is a nice neutral light color. Perfect for gluing the rice paper onto. It's nice and sturdy too. And I don't need to do any prep work to it at all. I'm going to move aside my scallop for right now, and let's take a look at how to actually glue this rice paper motif on here. So I'm going to use a little bit of white glue, and the glue that I'm using is my well-used, well-loved Cosmic Shimmer Cosmic Acrylic Glue. And this is going to work perfectly for this. It's the Specialist glue. Now, Lene taught me to thin this out with a little bit of water. So I'm going to use a damp paintbrush here, and I'm just adding this to my white glue. And then I'm going to apply it right onto my chipboard piece. And when I do this, I'm making sure to work onto my craft sheet. That's going to protect my work surface. And also make sure to go all the way to the ends, around the edges on this piece. I'm going to put my brush back into a jar of water just to make sure that that doesn't get gluey. And then I can simply position my rice paper down. I always like to start in the center and just kind of smooth out toward the edges. If you've ever done traditional decoupage, you may remember the challenge of air bubbles. And this does not happen with rice paper. It's really kind of exciting. So I'm going to take my brush again, pick up a little bit more glue, and then just add a little bit more on top of the design. Okay, and now I just need to let this dry. Now, after it dries, what I'll do is flip it over and just use a pair of scissors to trim around the outside edge there. So that's really as easy as it is. I absolutely love this technique. And of course, because I'm working onto chipboard, I've got an element that can be used on cards, can also be used for lots of other things too, maybe even Christmas tree ornaments. Okay, let's take a look at the card again, and you can see on my circular motif, I've got some dark blue going around here. So this is the Dylusions Balmy Night paint. This is an acrylic paint, and I simply adhere this or apply this around the circle, and I use a piece of cut and dry foam for this. So I put my glue onto my craft sheet, pick up a little bit with the white side of the foam, and then just run that around on the circle before I glue it onto the scallop element. Now the front of the card is a piece of pattern paper from the Winter Tales collection, and I have to confess to being a very lazy crafter with this. I really just took advantage of the beautiful artwork and the borders on here and the whole scenery. I really didn't have to do anything other than gluing it to the front of my card, which was wonderful. I did edge the card with a Balmy Night and then added a little bit of jute twine up here in the hole through my scallop piece and a dazzle greeting. Now for the card inside, more of that gorgeous pattern paper and another scripty dazzle message as well. So this is one quick and easy way to use rice paper. Let's take a look at another technique. With this card project, I used the same technique with the round landscape rice paper and again the circle chipboard. Here you'll see I edged the circle a bit more heavily with paint, and I'll confess it's because I didn't perfectly position the image and it dried slightly offset, and so I had to fudge it a little bit, but that's easy to do with a little extra coverage of paint. I used Balmy Night and I also used Desert Sand. So these two acrylic paint colors together, first applying the Balmy Night and then adding a bit of the Desert Sand on top. Again, using that piece of cut and dry, and that made a really nice soft edge around here that hid my misguided placement. Now the scallop was painted with Balmy Night, and then I just layered these two on top. Now as for the background, you can see on here, I think you can tell that this pattern paper has some flowers that have been added to it to create this effect. So I'm working with the pattern papers from the Winter Tales collection, as well as the Poinsettia rice paper. So let's take a look at this and how to create this effect. Okay, I'm going to move aside my card, again working onto my craft sheet. So I have my pattern paper here, I've got my Poinsettia rice paper, and I trimmed around the outside edge of this motif using a pair of scissors. I did cut fairly close to the lines, didn't worry about it being completely perfect though. Now once again, I'm going to bring in my white glue, a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm going to apply the glue to the cardstock rather than trying to maneuver a lightweight, fairly wispy piece of rice paper. So I've just put that onto my cardstock, my pattern cardstock, and then I can just gently place this on here. And you can see how it blends beautifully into that background. And then I'll just take my brush and make sure that I've got all of the ends really nicely secured down. And I can even go across the front. But again, I don't have to worry about air bubbles. This is going to secure really nicely. And I just need to let that dry. So what I did with my original card is quite a few flowers around here, so that I wanted some that will be kind of peeking out from behind here and then also kind of going off the edge as well. Now for the card inside, I have a really fun little gift card holder, and I love this idea for Christmas cards. If you are someone who likes to give gift cards or even money gifts as presents, this is a great way to do it. Now, this is made from a die, and the die comes in the mini envelope and gift card holder set. So you've got two dies in here, as you can see. Both of them are going to hold a standard gift card. Now, the one that I'm using is this little guy here. So let me show you this. So here's the die, and then of course, here's what you will create from it. You've got all of the score lines on here, so you just need to go ahead and fold those up. And I like to tuck in the side flaps like so, and then just simply score that down and glue it. Now, I really recommend that you use like the extra sticky tape to secure this down, and you are ready to go. Now, these look great when you make them from double-sided pattern paper. And since they measure just 2 1/4 by 3 7/8, you probably have some paper scraps in your stash that you can use for this. And so it's a wonderful way to put those to use as well. So you can give it separately to someone or secure it inside of the card as I did. Now, one more little project that I want to show you from this. This is another little mini envelope, also made from the same die set. So you can take a look. I've done this with white cardstock, and I'll show you what this looks like. So here's the die. Here it is. I simply cut from white cardstock. Again, you just need to follow the score lines. And this one has a little flap that you can kind of tuck in there to secure. So you can decorate this if you want to do it simply from white cardstock and then add some additional imagery on here, which is what I've done. So I've added a bit of color and shine. I've actually used some foil on here and some paint. And then I added the torn rice paper on top of that and a little dazzle as well. So let's take a look at how we can add this foil effect. Okay, let's do a little bit of paint foiling. So I've got my white cardstock envelope, and I'm going to leave this unglued for now and just put it down onto my craft mat. To do paint foiling, of course, you need to have some paint, and I've got the Desert Sand Dilutions paint. I've also got my splatter brush, and of course I need to have my foil, and I'm working with the Wow Fab Foil in Ice Blue. So I'm going to move aside some of these elements. What I do want to have on hand is a piece of that foil cut to size. So I've got it roughly cut a little bit larger than my envelope so that I'm ready to go with that. Another thing I have on hand is a big acrylic block. A book will also do the trick, and that's just to keep everything flat while the paint is drying. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little bit of this paint onto my craft mat. I'm going to take my splatter brush, and I'm getting it a little bit wet so that I've got slightly diluted dilutions. And then I'm just going to splatter this onto the front of my envelope. And I like to turn this from time to time just to make sure I'm getting some variety in where my splatters are going. Now, while this is wet, I'm going to quickly take my piece of foil and smooth this on top. Really make sure that all of the elements are connecting here. And then I'm going to kind of clean the paint off my hands quickly and off of my craft surface as well. Then I'm just going to put my acrylic block right on top, and I'm going to set these aside so that they can really dry. So the effect that I'm going for is one that will have not only the foiling on there, but also the splatters of the beautiful paint. Okay, now while this is drying, let's take a look at how to create the torn edges that you see on this piece of rice paper. So I'm going to bring in, again, one of the poinsettias, and we'll just be letting this dry over here. So I've got my little cup of water, and I have a smaller paintbrush, and this is going to help me just work around the edges of the poinsettia. So I'm just dipping this in and edging around. I'm not trying to get too detailed. I just want to be able to tear easily and remove some of the excess from this rice paper. So once I have that on here, then I just gently pull to remove the excess. If I bump into any of those fibers that you know we have on the back, just grab a pair of scissors and that will do the trick. Okay, so just going to kind of walk this around here. You may find that you need to go back and re-wet some areas if it dries. And don't worry about perfection with this. Remember that a lot of the background will fade into the background. Okay, so coming around here, and then this portion here too. I want to make sure not to get the end of that leaf All right, so more or less I've got this torn out, and then I'm ready to adhere this onto whatever surface I want to put it on. So let's take a look and see how our foil has gone. Take off that block and then simply pull off my foil. And you can see that I've got beautiful foiling on here where it's come in contact with some of that paint, but I also still have plenty of that paint showing as well. Now I like having the contrast between the blue and the brown, two colors that really work beautifully together. You could also go for a light blue and a dark blue, kind of for a tone-on-tone effect as well. And then what you could do, of course, is figure where you want to have your image go, and then simply adhere it as we've seen in the previous demonstrations. So let me show you again my little folder here. Here's the back of it with a little dazzle sentiment on there, and then that cozy little cottage. On the other side, on the front side, I've got some little pieces of that pattern paper from the Winter Tale collection, some dazzles, and then I've added a little bit more touch on the inside flap. Again, just securing this up with that extra sticky tape. And you can see this little envelope is just the right size for a note or a money gift or a gift card. Now, another card that I want to show you is this one here. This also has some foiling on the front, and I've used it on the background. I think you can see that beautiful shine there. Now, I've used, once again, the ice blue foil, and instead of using paint, I've used our old favorite, the Cosmic acrylic glue. So I've splattered that onto the pattern paper, applied the foil as before, and this exact same technique, and that will give you a purely foiled effect. I've also done it on the inside of the card. You can see here, just really right inside that card front itself. And then here I've got more of that beautiful pattern paper, and I've used the scallop square scallop dies to create a bit of a frame around here. Now, the card front has a cutout from the Winter Tale collection as the background element here, and this poinsettia is a rice paper image that I glued to white cardstock. I cut around the edges and then edged it with paint before foam taping it onto the card front. So you can take those rice paper images, add them to a sturdy white cardstock, and then create a more sturdy dimensional image if you wanted to pop that up on foam tape, as I've done here. Okay, I have one more quick card to show you using the Winter Tale collection. Like our first card, it's an easy design that makes good use of the beautiful collection of papers and cutouts. With this card, I wanted to focus on the artwork that's on this beautiful cutout. It is so beautifully illustrated. And this is the really great thing about the Winter Tale collection. You can create something absolutely stunning with only a few elements from the pack. So I've started with pattern paper, and I've combined two different designs on the card front. And I've got a gold ribbon that's wrapped around the front panel of the card, and that's to separate them. You can see on the inside of my card, I just have that gold ribbon coming along here, and then the ends are secured underneath my cutout. Now this element here is chipboard from the Winter's Tale chipboard set, and I've just used cut and dry to sponge on Balmy Night paint. So let's take a look at how to do this, a really quick and easy process. Now I've got a little piece of that chipboard. I've got one leftover poinsettia on here. Rather than using the Balmy Night, I'll use something a little bit closer to an actual poinsettia color. And this is the Peony Blush, so another one of the Dylusions paints. And I'll just put this down onto my craft sheet, grab my little piece of cut and dry, and I'm always using the white foam side for this. I just pick up a little bit of the paint on here. And I like to keep the chipboard elements in their backing piece rather than trying to pop them out and then paint from there. And then I just gently tap this on here. And this allows me to get nice, even, smooth coverage without having to worry about paint sort of glopping in between. You know, when you use a brush, it can be a little bit easy for that paint to fall in between those delicate areas there. And I can let that dry and then add a second coat if I want to, but one coat seems to be just enough. So we're good to go with that. I just let that dry and then I can use it on my card. So here I've simply glued the border down halfway underneath this beautiful cutout and halfway on here. Another bit of gold ribbon to accent that. Now for the card inside, I've let this chipboard be its natural color and just simply glued it to the cutout. And a simple dazzle sentiment on here and you are ready to go. So with this last project, I think we've seen just how many ways you can use this beautiful Winter's Tale collection. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for being a part of the Paper Wishes family. We're really glad you're here with us. I can't wait to see what you create, so do be sure to leave a comment. We'd love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com.